6 months, and then the outfit I was in was Westover. They were building Westover. And then they took this, I was in this B-17 heavy bomb group. And then they decided they moved the whole heavy bomb group to Portland, Oregon.
Okay. Let's see, Carol.
Or not to Portland, actually, outside of Portland. I've forgotten the name of the location, but anyway. So I traveled back and forth across the country a couple of times. We ended up there in Oregon. And
Thinking about zooming.
so I was out in Oregon when I put in for flying training. And I managed to pass the eye test, so I got in. I think they were scraping the bottom of the barrel for pilots. And they got me. So anyway, so then I started flying. So the war is going on all this time, and I'm doing everything but going anywhere near it, I guess. But it was lots of fun. Oh, we're right around LA for our fruit and our pre-flight training in Santa Ana, California. And then all the training was mostly in California and Bakersfield Valley, the Valley area. We got locked into part of our training. We sat there locked in under bad weather for about a week until we never got off the ground.
Okay, this is going to require
What was the
editing.
first trainer plane you used?
Oh, I got a tremendous break on the trainers.
Okay, let's go in the other room, Emily.
For primary training to learn how to first learn how to fly.
Sure you can see.
They used to teach you how to fly by the seat of your pants, and they had these steermen, the two open cockpits with the biplanes. They're wonderful for acrobatics because they had all this wing service. The gas tank was up in the top wing, new with gravity-feed gas, and they were wonderful airplanes. But after the war, they used them for years for crop dusters.
Yeah.
They were wonderful airplanes. Well, you know, it's real fun to fly one, and you wear goggles and sit in the open cockpit. You fly along about 70 miles an hour, and you learn to land by listening to the sound of the wind on the wire struts that held the wings together. And after you had a teacher with you for instructor for about 8 or 9 hours, and then they soloed you out. And then after that, you got to fool around by yourself and try a few maneuvers.
So when you landed, it was just off by sight. I mean, there's no real instruments that can help you land like today,
Well,
right?
they had all the instruments blocked off except, I don't know, they might have the ball and the needle to show whether you're level or whatever else.
But no altimeter, no, you didn't know how
No instruments until later on.
Oh, okay.
After you got into the next aircraft was the heavy metal single wing aircraft, BT-13, I guess. And I look at one of those, it's too heavy to get off the ground, but it flew.
It flew, yeah.
And then you got into a little bit of night flying, which nobody wanted to do, I guess. But advanced trainers, we had these junky, fabric-covered, twin-engine aircraft. The wings even fell. One of them even fell out of the sky because the wing fell off it, I think.
Oh, good.
But now they had another little AT-9, which was a higher wing loading. They were hot. They were more dangerous, I guess. But when we finished flying school, when you went to school, the last couple of months, you were either in single engine flying school, which would be more like fighters, or you were in multiple engines, 2 engines, which would mean you were headed toward a bigger aircraft or a bomber, probably. Thank God I didn't end up as B-17s because they were killing all those pilots. But when we finished flight school, there was a rumor we were going to fly the Lockheed twin-tail. I can't even think of the name of it. He had a beautiful little aircraft with twin tail and counter-rotating pop. I can't say the name of it. Beautiful aircraft. Well, there was rumor we were going to fly these things, but it didn't happen. We ended up in these airliners, DC-3s, which was actually, this looked pretty damn big in those days. But really, of course, one of the greatest aircraft the world's ever produced, the DC-3. The airliner, they were already the airliner of the country, and they had comfortable seats for the pilots, and something. Military aircraft don't have automatic pilots. You had to hand fly the military aircraft, but the DC-3s, they had the same thing as the commercial airlines, and they had the automatic pilots, and they were very comfortable to fly, and a lot of fun,
How did you
In
get
fact,
picked?
one weekend,
One or the other?
one weekend, a bunch of pilots got together. We had some training in Florida, and just a lot of it was fooling around. And one weekend, I got on board with a bunch of pilots, toured the entire United States in a weekend. Took off on a Saturday morning, headed up to Washington, to Bowling, up to Washington, and stopped there for lunch, and got back on and headed up north. I think we stopped at LaGuardia up in New York, stopped there, had something more to eat maybe. We took off again, and then went north and east for a while, and then turned and went over to Dayton, Ohio, and got there about 11 o'clock at night, time for some midnight lunch, I guess, or some meal, and then ended up in Texas, Dallas, for breakfast, and about that time, of course, it's Sunday, so got back late Sunday afternoon after touring the whole damn country, and I think somebody raised hell about this trip. What the hell do you people think you're doing? But some people would take, if they lived in the country on a farm or something, take one of these aircraft and go home for the weekend and land in the farm, get away with it. But they were fun to fly. Wartime flying was fun too.
You wouldn't take a DC-3 home with you?
Fly across the channel every day, back and forth.
Why? What were you doing over there?
Well, we were in England for a long time. Well, we were involved in towed gliders on D-Day, and our glider pilots made it back, I guess, somehow. A lot of them didn't, of course. And then later we had a drop paratroops in Holland. And who's the general that they had the movie about?
Pat.
Pat, yeah.
Pat.
I figured Pat saved my life because they had one horrendous mission planned for us to go in across Europe, and we, when you're going to fly through some pretty bad country, and figured they could lose up as many as half of their aircraft on the way in, then you had to turn around and come back. But Patton went so fast on the ground. When Patton got loose on the ground, he didn't stop. He didn't believe in stopping. You got the enemy on the run. You don't slow down. You keep right on him. He went so damn fast on the ground they had to scrap the missions. So we got a break
on D-Day you towed in gliders?
Yeah.
What is it like?
And then I got drafted. On weekends we used to go. We used to have a great time. We used to go to London on weekends, and they had all kinds of great facilities there for the troops. And then I got drafted to go fly a weather ship for the 5th Air Force, and I was stationed in a damn tent in freezing weather in France. And we get up at 5 o'clock every morning, and we go and we fly a whole route fly the entire perimeter around Europe, all the way to Belgium and Brussels and back, report the weather at different points. So we died on this weather ship for, I don't know, a month or longer, a month or two. About a month, I guess. And but it wasn't all that bad.
That was after D-Day? That must have been after D-Day.
This was after,
yeah.
We were still in England, yeah, we're still in because I got a sign from England. Then later after the war was going on, why our whole outfit was moved over to about 20 miles west of Paris. Somewhat, I don't know how far west. We were west of Paris for a while, and there was an old French military base there. We were located there for a while, and they were bringing. They had a few German POWs there, helping take care of stuff, I guess. And then finally the war ended, and started hauling French POWs out of Germany back to Paris. And you put these guys are pretty bad shape. One of them gets in the warm weather, and it gets kind of rough in the afternoon. So first one gets sick, and then they'd all get sick. It's kind of bad business.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun.
So how was Paris?
And then I had another great experience on VE Day, when the war and European war was ended.
I messed up, imagine.
When they changed aircraft engines on one of our aircraft, somebody had to go up and put some slow time on it for about 4 hours. So on VE Day, I got given the job of flying one of these aircraft for the slow time thing. So we headed over toward Cherbourg and the coast. We came back with, I flew across Paris, flew down Paris. The Champs-Élysées and the Arc de Triomphe, one at one end with the other. Flew down the street. I'm flying down the street pretty low down, and there's thousands or hundreds of thousands of people in the streets walking. Everybody just poured out, and all these people are in the streets. And I'm flying down one side of the street, and I'm in a B-17 coming up the other side. But we had some great time. And then earlier in the war, I got on a ferry trip to the French Riviera. He had a ferry trip there, and then another trip to Italy. Ferried some personnel or something to Italy earlier in the war, when we used to fly out in the middle of the ocean, and went down to the Rock of Gibraltar, and then different stops on the African coast, and then into Naples in Italy, up into Italy. And when we flew into Italy to Naples, Mount Vesuvius was erupting, and I had a picture of it. And somebody stole my picture, but it doesn't matter, I guess. But those great days. Well, we were in Naples for a while. We used to go to the opera there. Because the opera for them is like we used to go when I was a kid. You go to cowboy movies on Saturday. Well, the people there they go to the opera every weekend, I guess. Hear some of this opera stuff. But the travels I have, I can't believe the incredible life. We flew overseas, got a brand new airplane in Fort Wayne, Indiana, fly down to West Palm, and then take off and go down to South America, stop at Trinidad, and across. I remember flying across the mouth of the Amazon River, then at Belém, and we went down to Brazil, where the coast goes out a ways, Natal, and that was the jumping off point to fly across to England. In order to get across, you had to go across the South Atlantic, stop at Ascension Island to refuel, stay there overnight, because all our flights were daytime, and then over to Africa, and then hops from Africa up across the desert, and you fly across the desert, and there'd be these little villages where the natives live. Probably until the war started, they probably never seen an aircraft, and they'd be running out of their little huts to look up at the airplane. But then in Africa, in order to get to England, all the flights out there went at night. Every 5 minutes there'd be a flight at night to fly out into the middle of the North Atlantic and then fly north, stay away from the Germans. And I think one flight, flying in between two layers of cloud, you better hope your projected winds are somewhere near right, because you could get far off course if they weren't. But fly all night and get there. Hit Ireland and England about early in the morning. They had a grass field on the west coast of England called St. Morgan's, and land there first. Then the next day take off and come over to London. At least that's where we went.
So you would land on a grass field? Was it really a
A lot of fields were grass fields. I remember landing at Le Bourget in Paris, where Lindbergh landed years earlier, and I don't know whether it was probably grass there, but I really don't remember.
Yeah.
I remember London having a grass. What's the name of the airport? A lot of grass fields.
Was that harder?
What?
Was it harder? Harder to land on a grass field?
Oh no, it's all the same.
Really? Seems like it'd be pretty bumpy.
Oh no, they keep it level.
So after VE Day, what did you do?
After VE Day?
Yeah.
After VE Day, I guess we were headed back to the States in July. No, we weren't over there too much longer. Of course, a lot of troops were stuck there for a long time, but there was so much all the aircraft had to be flown back to the United States. And in the wintertime, they didn't use the northern route because that was too dangerous. And we came in the summer, but there was so much air traffic they couldn't all go the northern route, which is shorter. So we got to fly the southern route back, which is longer but a lot more fun, I guess. And so we got back to the States around sometime in July, after VE Day, I guess.
So what was the southern route?
And then to fly back to African stops, and then across to Ascension Island again. From Ascension over to South America and then north again. They had the routes all set up.
So when you stopped overnight, did you get to go out and do sightseeing?
The family that owned the house that we lived in, or rented the place there, one of their family members was a lawyer, and he was stationed. He was like 38. He joined the military, or he was stationed there at Ascension. Well, when we came back, we had a lot of leave time, and then we got sent out to Alliance, Nebraska. And the weather was still pretty nice there, except one day, toward the end of the time we were there, one day it would be nice, sunny and warm, the next day it would be snowing. So, but, well, anyway, I don't know what happened, but, before that, I guess, we were in, I went back, originally when we picked up the aircraft to go overseas, we picked it up in, can't say the name of the place.
Somewhere in the U.S.?
In the U.S., yeah. In the one of the northern cities, halfway across the country. Anyway, can't think of it.
So when was that time that you got that medal?
We were there, and when the war ended, the same thing happened. Everybody got out in the streets.
So remember you got that medal? What was that? When did that happen?
Oh, you get medals for everything.
Which trip were you on?
Where?
Where were you flying when you got shot at?
In Holland, over Holland. They had a parachute drop in Holland.
So they were shooting at you, or were they also shooting at the parachute guys?
Shooting at anybody they could hit, I guess.
I wouldn't want to jump out of a plane in a parachute. Probably was gunfire.
I was near the tail end of the formation. It's not the best place to be, I guess.
So they hit you?
That's one small advantage Jimmy Stewart had as the commanding officer of the group. He'd be sitting up in the first plane. Of course, they probably would like to hit that plane too.
So when they shot your engine, how many people were on board?
A load of paratroopers.
You mean you had a plane full of people?
You know, well, you still got one engine, but it's kind of slowed us down a little bit.
Did they know that they got hit?
I don't know. Probably.
You didn't hear a bunch of
They all
screaming?
got out okay, and we got back all right. So.
So what happened when the...
I don't remember. I don't remember any. Well, I had a couple of friends that were on an aircraft that got shot down, and they jumped. They jumped out, but they were too close to the ground for their chutes to open, I guess. I know we went. Probably the mission where I know we went on one mission. We just left the parachutes in the back of the airplane. Said, we're not going to leave this aircraft at flying at low altitude. Besides it, our aircraft, you could fly it into the ground. You could land. You could make a crash landing. You didn't have to bail out. Some aircraft are so heavy, so hot that glide angle is like straight down. You want to get the hell out of the aircraft, I guess, because you don't have a glide angle that's very healthy. But the DC-3s had a pretty good glide angle. You could glide down. A lot of them ended up floating in the channel after the invasion. I remember seeing them floating in the channel. And they've had them go down in the ocean, and some freighter would come along and hook onto one of them, tow it to shore, because once the wing tanks are empty, if there's air in there, they pretty well keep it afloat.
Well, that's good. So did anybody say they wouldn't jump?
I had another trip to Lawson Field in Fort Benning, Georgia, to haul jump troops, haul parachutes. We were there for about a month. And every day we'd load up the troops, take them up to 500 feet, and they jump out. We kept doing that all day long. And one of the jump masters said he had somebody refuse to jump on him once. Got to the door and didn't jump. So that would never happen again, because they get to the door, if they hesitated, he just booted them out. Because they're hooked up to a static line, so the parachute opens automatically, and it's not a big deal. They never had any problem with chutes like that. I don't know who folded the chutes, but I guess you learn to fold your own chutes. Do it right.
So did you ever jump out of an airplane?
Oh no, I never knew anybody had interest in jumping out.
You even practiced?
We used to care. We had parachutes, but we mostly didn't bother with them. We don't need parachutes. Well, we're flying the same thing everybody else. The airlines were using, they weren't using any chutes.
Even in training, they never pushed you, have you jump out of a plane?
Well, it's easy enough to use a parachute, but it's not an emergency. Well, I guess you could train for it. When I was first in the service, oh, I signed up once to be a ball turret gunner on the 278. I think they were going to give me an extra $15 a month. I said, sure, I'll take the $15. But I don't think I ever got in a ball turret.
So when you got out of the war and you came home, then what did you do?
Came right back to Westover where I started, I guess.
A really, really fun dance.
Did you have a GI Bill?
Yeah, I went to school in
It's a
Seattle.
really, really fun dance.
Did they pay for everything?
I need Monica's help to do it. Don't you
No,
want
they-
to fun and dance, dance, dance?
Paid your tuition. I don't remember. I think there was some kind of allowance, but I don't remember.
Okay, you can sit
I
here
don't
and just
remember.
call me dance.
So where was Westover?
Alright, we're good.
Yeah, the next, got out, went to school, and every weekend we went
Oh, we have to get hot first, don't we?
fishing along Island Sound, fishing, swimming. The next 5 years went by like that. And then Korea War came along. And everybody, I wasn't the only one left. Everybody figured, well, during the war, you were in for 5 years during the war, so they had this 20-year retirement. Could I get back in and finish out the 20 years?
So you re-enlisted during Korea. You re-enlisted during Korea.
I was told they were going to recall me. They didn't do it.
Oh, were you in the reserves or?
So I got in the car. I got in the car and went down to the Pentagon and said I want to get back in the service. So they said okay. They sent me a letter and authorized me to come back in as a buck sergeant. They had out of the office before that, but anyway. So I went back in. And as soon as I got back in, one of the commanders I worked for, got me recalled to active status as a lieutenant.
Were you a lieutenant? What was your rank when you were in the war?
First lieutenant when I got out, and then I went back in as the first lieutenant. Then I had a commander who'd been escaped from the coal mines by becoming a fighter pilot, and one of the officers in our squadron had been an advertising writer, and so he used to write speeches for the commanding officer, the first commanding officer we had. And then the next one we had was this fighter pilot, and this guy's name was Hopkins. He had several kids, and his hobby used to be to go to one of the local churches and preach a sermon on Sunday. He could get up and talk about anything for as long as you wanted to listen. And anyway, so they had a special promotion fitness report, and so the Ballard, the commander, Ezra Ballard, I guess, he said, "You really want to get this guy promoted?" And he said, Hopkins said, "You really want to get this guy promoted?" He said, "Yes." So he wrote me a fitness report that nailed it. So I got promoted.
So what did you get promoted to?
Captain.
Captain?
Then, what you had to do, you get back in the service, you keep your shoes shine and stay out of trouble. Your promotions are automatic. Not quite, but pretty good.
So what did you do during Korea? Did you fly missions in Korea?
What?
Did you fly missions in Korea?
No.
Or no?
I was a personnel officer.
Oh, personnel.
Didn't you have some kind of recreation job?
I got a job with the 5th Air Force, the cadre. The troops used to go to Japan for R&R, and I became the R&R officer for the 5th Air Force in Tachikawa. Another fat cat job.
That's a great job.
And
So you're the entertainment director for
I had
the
all
troops.
kinds of great jobs. So
So what did you do for that job? You got to
Well,
go check out all the
they had-
hotels and
They had a group of airmen that handled all the reservations to the hotels and stuff for the R&R people and greeted them and so forth. And so I just got involved with that. They had somebody for that job, so I got to fill the slot.
Why didn't they pick someone who spoke Japanese?
But
Why weren't any?
Why didn't they pick someone who spoke Japanese?
well, nobody spoke Japanese except the Japanese, I guess.
So how did you make arrangements? Because they stayed in
Oh,
Japanese hotels, right?
Japanese
It
people
was a
also.
coordinated effort with the Japanese people and the hotel owners and so forth, hotel association, and the different places where tourists would normally go. So the troops could do whatever they wanted to. So I got to spend 6 months of my Korean tour over in Japan.
Well, since they had just lost the war, weren't they sort of mad at you?
What?
Since they just lost the war, weren't they kind of mad?
No, this was a long time later. This was 1954. Besides MacArthur, he really did a fabulous job for the country.
It smells good. I might smell it.
I'm sure there were some Japanese, but it's not that way. But
I guess next to the emperor himself, MacArthur was
When do you have to head back down?
the guy everybody looked up to. Huh? Japanese are great people. I love Japanese. I love Japan. Fine.
me too.
I remember you brought back that doll, the dance of the 7 umbrellas or something.
There it is. Oh, in the hallway.
So after Korea, what did you do next?
After Korea, well, I guess we came back to Eglin in Northwest Florida there, and as soon as I got to Eglin, I went in a real estate officer. I said, "You got any waterfront property?" He said, "Yeah, we have a couple of spots." One of them wasn't worth a damn. The other was the greatest place in the world, Shalimar.
Shalimar, so that's when you
And,
bought Shalimar.
And it belonged to the St. Joe Paper Company. And years before, they come in there and they wiped it out. They took all the trees and left a mess there. But then, of course, the amazing part is only like 3 miles from the base, and you know, well, the lot I got had all been somebody who'd been transferred, I guess, and they were willing to sell the lot. I think in those days, I don't know, it was only around, maybe around $3,000 for the lot. For some people, that was quite a bit. Well, I didn't have the money anyway. So I wrote my parents and said, send me the money. I need to buy this lot.
Better than borrow from your family.
And then when I got ready to build a house, I'm going to put a stupid regular house on there, which would have been a mistake. And but they said, well, there's no mortgage money available. It's the luckiest thing that ever happened to me. No mortgage money available. I said, okay. Sat down, drew a little plan up that I figured we could live in. And started building a house out of your hip pocket. That's the best way to build it. Got the slab down and the walls up, and place for the windows. And the big jalousie windows, those huge floor-to-ceiling jalousie windows. You could buy 2 quality windows. One the better quality and cheap quality. I got the cheap quality. They worked okay. For about $25 a piece, a huge floor-to-ceiling window. So the whole house is the front and the back. It's nothing but windows, but they didn't cost that much. And so as soon as we got my father came down and helped me. We helped put the roof on. I built the trusses for the roof in my backyard where we were living. Borrowed a truck from somebody, hauled them to there, set them up, and got somebody to help deck it over. Then bought the aluminum from Sears or somebody. And had this corrugated aluminum with beautiful stuff, the ideal for a roof. House went up in a hurry, and the ceiling wasn't finished, the floor wasn't finished. We moved in. We lived in the house for a couple of years. We only were there a couple of years, but the house was valued at, the whole property was valued like $5,000. The homestead exemption was $5,000. No tax to pay, no tax bill at all. God, that's the way it ought to be in this country. If you own a home, you shouldn't have to pay property taxes. Perfect place there. And our own little beach. We're sitting out there in the water one day, and the wind is blowing across the bay, and Jenny was facing out for the water, and she gave the alarm. It's a big diamondback rattlesnake floating, got caught out there and blown across the bay, and he was a few feet from us when Jenny sounded the alarm. We all got out of the water. The piece of 2x4 there, I guess, somewhere. So the snakes help us in the water, of course. About the time the snake hit the shore, we hit him over the head with a 2x4, and that was the end of the snake. But the amazing part of the rattlesnakes is the girth. The body on these things is bigger than you might think. Heavy body.
How long was he?
Must have been at least 6 foot long. Pretty good length. Pretty good length, yeah. Then they had it stretched out there for a while. When they did construction on the base, they had huge amounts of property. When they did any work or cleared areas, snakes and everything would be displaced and they'd be all over.
I think if everything goes to its plan, I think.
It's only 3 miles from the base, but after you got on the base, you had to drive another 5 or more miles to get where you wanted to go. That was a one-base command. Command usually cover a lot of bases, but this is a one-base command. And they had practically every aircraft the Air Force had, I guess, there. Pretty close to it.
What was your job in England?
Signing papers. Personnel.
So then how did you get into missiles? How did you get into missiles?
Get into what?
Missiles.
Oh, well, the missile program came along. I just got pulled into it with lots of other people. I got into the Thor program, intermediate range ballistic missiles, because these were stationed in England, and that's what took us to England. And we were in the SAC. Well, we weren't like the rest of SAC. We were under SAC, but we were connected with the British over there, and that was great. We served with the RAF over there in England for 3 years. It was a fun time, nothing but fun. 12-hour shifts with the missile. Yeah, 12-hour shifts with a missile, I guess. Well, you enjoyed England. You remember that.
I like that captain's house.
We were the only American. We were in a little market town. We were the only Americans there for a while. And everybody in town knew everybody else. There was no such thing as crime. If a stranger appeared in town, everybody knew right away there was somebody that didn't live there. It's like what small town America used to be years ago, I guess. Just think, when I was a kid, the population in the United States was less than 150 million people.
Jim's great at it. He's coaching Charlie, so then they asked him to coach the whole team and stuff. Oh, big.
What did Granddad do?
There was one here in Atlanta.
He grew up on a dairy farm and that kind of farming, different stuff. And my mother grew up on a farm that had been in the family for more than 5 generations, I guess. In 1926, I had that article in the paper that ran in 1926 about my uncle and how many generations before him had been farmers there. And when I was a kid, I remember they had cows and they had plow horses and horses to move wagons.
Do they even remember what country they came from?
I don't know. My mother's family had been there for back in the time of when Abraham Lincoln was probably a little kid, I suppose. They were farming there in New York State. We're in between, not too far from Lake Ontario and in between Rochester and Syracuse. I was born in Syracuse. Before that, we had a family table where people were born at home, mostly on the same piece of furniture, I guess.
A table? So do you remember where Granddad's family was from?
Yeah. When Dana and Liza and Jennifer visited that area, and we went to the farm where I had been, where my mother was born 100 years earlier, and the farmer who was there, his mother, I guess it was, somebody there, they knew Margaret. Margaret and Hazel were children of my uncle, who took over the farm there. And,
Which uncle?
Uncle Lucian. My mother's older brother, who had the farm. He was about 15 years older than my mother, I believe. And
Did he transfer to the same? Wow.
Well, what did your father's parents do? They were dairy farmers too?
I think they had, they were involved in farming and dairy.
Everybody was farmers to begin with, huh? It seems
That was,
like.
farm community, really. I remember on Saturday night, farmers all go to town and get together. They had like a gazebo with and then the people who played music got in the band and they played music, and the little kids run around. I was one of them, I guess.
Yeah, right. I just wanted to know when I was only in 7th grade. I went to school.
Town was so small it only needed one side of the street, really.
Of course, in our case.
But they had a park
In our
there.
case, we moved around being in the military, so all these kids who knew everybody because they were
Pretty small
working
town.
in the- I couldn't relate to that anyway. But still, we were like where we were.
I remember they had a model,
Changed,
the original model T Ford,
I
I guess,
believe was my sister. She was in high school.
open. I remember
And she came from
the touring type Ford with the open top.
When did you first ride in a car? Do you remember that?
Well, my father worked in the Franklin automobile factory early on. And we had a Franklin. I remember when we lived in Rochester, I think, when I was probably 4 or 5 years old. I remember finding the key to the car, and carrying it all around with me part of the day. Then when my father came home, put the car in the garage. I'm a little kid. I go out, get up in the driver's seat, put the key in. And this had an automatic. You put the key in and you turn the switch, and it was auto. It didn't have any. I don't know what the starter thing was. Just automatically started. Automatic start. But fortunately, my parents found me there right away. I guess. But my father let me drive a car when I was 11 years old. Just drive it up the street. You have to shift gears a little bit.
Can you reach the gears? Are your legs too short to reach the gears?
No, I don't think so.
Who's the first president you can remember?
I remember when Hoover was running against Al Smith, and Republicans thought it was pretty important for Hoover to win.
Maybe that's why I never had such great experience, because I went to the South.
What do you think of Hoover? Anything? Do you remember
High school.
people talking about Hoover?
I think kind of like Massachusetts used to be considered the Republican states. I don't know when they lost it and went all the way to the left. They can't go any further left than they are right now, I guess. I don't know.
So do you remember the crash in '29? You must have been, what, 10 then? Or so, maybe.
I think the family fortune was mainly invested in owning a home, and the idea was you should always own your home, and if you sold it, you had money to buy another one. But what did you say?
I said, you remember the crash, the stock market
Crash.
in '29.
Not really, because let's see, the crash took place in '29, and so I was about 10 years old. I think I realized that the family fortunes were not all that great about that time. But people were managing to get by with a little bit of help, a little bit of luck, I guess.
There you go.
I know maybe years before that, people used to try to own stock, like they wanted to own blue chip stock. Well, some of the family were invested in Pennsylvania Railroad, which was considered the best blue chip in the world, and it became virtually worthless. I don't know how the hell that can happen, because a railroad consists of a lot of valuable goods, rolling stock, tracks, trains, and so forth. Well, how could it ever become worthless? But the stock market sometimes works kind of like that, kind of like recently. You know, to say that, you know, you can't sell a house if you can't sell a house, period, then it was going to be worth nothing. Of course, it's not worth nothing. It's worth something, but it's worth less. Anyway. But anyway, so that's what I learned about the stock market. Blue chip stocks are great, but don't bet your life on them. Then the other thing I learned really late in life, when I went back to school after the war, I learned one or two things that had nothing to do with my going to school, but were more important perhaps. And one of them is that the boards of directors and the CEOs were more or less in bed with each other, and that's not the right way. That's not the way it's supposed to work. And that's the reason that a few years later, people started moving in and going after these corporations that weren't sharing their profits with their shareholders. And in many cases, they did the shareholders, Carl Icahn and I guess a lot of others, they really did, in most cases, they were doing the stockholders a big favor by going after these jokers and getting things straightened out a little bit and giving the stockholders a better deal and maybe a fair shake even. So I became disenchanted with the stock market years ago. Well, of course, I learned that the real estate's the only way to go. That's where the money has always been made. So, you know, I started looking for real estate. My mother and I started looking for real estate. And then in the service, wherever you went, for years, wherever you went in the service, you could buy a home, and when you left, you could keep it, rent it out, keep it. Or you got the next base, find another home. You were in an ideal position as you traveled to different places to find worthwhile properties and buy them and keep them. The only way to go. And then the other principle is the Rockefeller principle. You never sell, you just keep buying. If you keep buying, pretty soon you own the whole world. You own the world. You just have to keep buying. Never sell. Think of all the people you know that sell their homes. Well, where do they end up? They end up with nothing but another home. That's no good. Besides, when I built the place in North Carolina, people in Connecticut said, well, I'm living in Connecticut, said, what the hell do you want with a place way down there in North Carolina? Connecticut's long gone. North Carolina's still there. But the big money's always been in real estate, I think. Stock, a piece of stock is a worthless piece of paper, like our U.S. dollar is today, I guess.
So you never had to worry about not having enough food?
When I was a kid, you could buy a loaf of bread for 11 cents. It cost the grocer who lived across the street from us, cost him 10 cents for the loaf. He made a penny. When he sold a loaf of bread to a lady, he made a penny. But he sold a hell of a lot of bread. He made enough to feed his family, too. But it used to be people always lived outside the city limits, so they didn't have to pay city taxes. The only problem with that is the city limits kept expanding. And then Jacksonville, which is the atrocity of all dimensions. You could be miles out in the woods, there's nothing there, and the sign says City of Jacksonville. You know, you gotta be kidding. How can they get away with that nonsense?
People voted for it.
Why the hell would people vote for taxes on themselves? They should vote to do away with taxes.
Because the schools were about to be disaccredited, and they had a lot of corruption and
Nonsense. What happened is you lose control of your government. The government's always trying to take control, and the taxpayers are apparently willing to give it up.
well, on
Be
one
talked out of
level,
anything.
it's one less set of bureaucracy to go through. So instead of the city and the county, you just have one.
There's one thing that will save this country, the fair tax. And who's the preacher, the Baptist preacher who ran for president? I can't think of his name. It was part of his platform. He adopted the fair tax. He's the only one. And he's been on radio.
Ron Paul.
No, the other one.
Starts with an H.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
What's his name?
we can't think of it.
He was pretty popular. He's doing pretty well for a while. But if you don't know anything about the fair tax, you really ought to get into it. It could save our country. I think other countries already dropped it.
Huckabee, that's all.
Yeah.
We have to stop. We punish we punish the very things we need to have: work, savings, investment. They don't need to be punished by taxes. The time to collect the taxes is when you spend the money. When you buy something, that's the time. That's the time you should pay your tax. When you get your paycheck, it should be yours. The government shouldn't be. Direct taxation is the badge of slavery.
Bus comes over the crest of the hill, and I'm like, can I go back in the house? She goes, go back in the house.
When I joined the Army, I got $21 a month. One deduction, 10 cents for the old soldiers' home.
Right. Books for
I got to keep the money. I could buy gas for my car on the 21
My hair
bucks.
is like pretty long.
Actually, there's several other tax plans that come somewhat close to the fair tax. They're pretty good, but the fair tax has got to be the best of all. It would actually, first of all, everybody gets a rebate check for the amount that they're going to have to pay in the sales tax on their for the basic necessities. So they get that refund at the beginning. Half of the people who don't pay any income tax now, nobody would. The lower part of the income group wouldn't pay any tax at all, really. The only tax you pay is when you spend your money. You want to buy something expensive, and you should be willing to pay that. It would put the purchaser back in control of his government too. Because if you didn't like the way your government worked, you could hold back on your purchases. That would send them a message real fast.
Well, we're sending Florida that message was the sales taxes.
But if you don't know about the fair tax, you ought to get interested in it.
Big deficit.
Yeah, big flashlight. Yeah,
The other thing with it, yeah, the cake that you got, there's like huge device.
Also, you could bring back enormous amounts of capital into our country. Everything's fleeing our country. People are fleeing our country now. Capital is going away from our country. Capital corporate taxes are ridiculous. Nobody seems to understand that corporations don't pay taxes. They only collect taxes. They don't pay them. They just collect them for the government. Corporate taxes are a terrible idea. The best thing Obama could do is say, okay, he's going to do away with the corporation taxes, period. The stock market would jump up like you never would believe. That would be the first thing. The next thing he should say is, Bush tax cuts are permanent. You don't ever anybody knows you don't ever raise taxes when you're in a recession or depression. That's the worst possible time to raise taxes. That's going to put you in a recession forever. Do that. That's a bad idea.
So did your parents,
Of course,
like Franklin?
Obama and McCain, they were spouting nonsense anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Did your parents like Franklin Roosevelt?
Well, he gave them Social Security, I suppose. But
Wait, Mom.
Franklin Roosevelt, well, the government typically interfered and prolonged the Depression, and then the Congress did one or two things that were total disasters, I guess.
Well, what did Granddad do during the Depression? Did he have a job?
He had his own car business for a while, and then he was with a couple of our friends in the new car business for a while. He had the service department. They were selling Franklins for quite a few years, which is one of the greatest cars, air-cooled engine. And then during the war, he went to work for Nash Engineering. He went to work like everybody else in industries that are connected with the defense of our country.
Did Grandma go to work?
Well, before the war, my mother worked in a sweatshop
She did?
making shirts, Manhattan shirts. I mean.
They had found out.
A friend of mine whose mother had been a nurse, she worked in a sweatshop making the shirts too. And then she went back to nursing, which is a great idea. During the war, I don't think my mother worked during the war much. I don't know. I kind of forgot. She probably volunteered at the hospital. She was a volunteer for some of these things.
And, you know, and so anybody that would have been.
Did you work after the war?
Could have jumped, you know?
They say they don't jump.
No.
That's what they say.
After the war,
Yeah.
They say they don't jump.
my brother and I talked, I guess we talked my father into retiring a little bit early. So, you know, when I built a house in North Carolina, they provided a place for them to live, so they could down there and retire with their grandchildren. Because I didn't have any children.
Did Granddad smoke?
He gave it up a long time ago. He did smoke when he was young.
No roof got it.
After he was,
that year.
he didn't smoke when he was a kid, but he did smoke
So it was so bad that
during quite a few of his adult years. But then he gave it up.
yeah.
Hannah got it from him.
Gave it up. I don't know how long
The
it's
younger cabin, it was found, and then somebody
quit.
lived in the younger cabin. And we checked it.
Did the smoking damage his health?
So later,
Molly got
3
it.
weeks later, I find one.
I don't know. He lived well in his mid-80s, so I don't think it didn't do him any good, of course. I don't know what the permanent damage is on smoke.
What was wrong with Granddad? What was wrong with him at the end?